We are at the end one species. Even though we represent different countries, there is national borders, but we are all on this planet Earth happen to be here at the same time. Meditation really helps to reach this level of understanding that we are more than just the self, and we can tap into this more universal consciousness, and that really can be beneficial in how we address also global challenges.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Mindfulness in Politics Project, your short weekly podcast about how to use mindfulness tools working in politics, policy, and media. Josh, today we're having a conversation about how to use mindfulness on the world stage and how diplomats all around the world employ the tools of mindfulness to hopefully achieve better results.
Yeah, Igor, this is a guest that we have today that I've been so excited to talk to. Miriam Oiri, I first met her at Princeton University. She came here to give a speech and some remarks about how she sees the overlap between meditation, mindfulness, a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this podcast, and multilateral diplomacy. Miriam is a former deputy ambassador for the Principality of Liechtenstein to the United Nations. She is currently working at the UN's Human Rights Office in New York. She is also a yoga teacher, has studied workforce and labor issues at Harvard Law School. And very notably, she was really instrumental in getting the United Nations to adopt a World Meditation Day every single year. That is being held on December 21st. So a timely discussion for us to be having. Miriam will be appearing here today in her personal capacity. She's not speaking on behalf of Liechtenstein, where we're so eager to hear about her perspective as an experienced diplomat who has been using some of these methods for her own work and her own well-being. So Miriam, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm so curious how, as a diplomat, a political scientist, you even came to this kind of work, how you were introduced to meditation and yoga, and sort of what was the pathway for you to moving that from something that might have just been strictly a personal practice to something that you saw value in incorporating in diplomacy and your political work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as you said, it started as a personal practice actually many years ago. My entry point to meditation has been yoga, like the yoga tradition, which of course is much broader than it's often understood, especially in the Western culture. Like it's not just the asana practice, what we do on the yoga mat, but it's really has different limbs of yoga, and meditation is one integral part of it. And I've always found the practice beneficial for my own well-being, but also how I show up in life, how I'm present and focused. And then that, of course, also contributes to my work on a daily basis.
Give us a sense of how mindfulness, how meditation has helped on the world stage. We've discussed mindfulness is just a personal practice of helping you be less reactive, more thoughtful, more aware in the present moment and aware of the present moment. And here we're really bridging and moving into thinking of mindfulness as part of a culture.
I mean, as you rightly said, Igor, there's been also lots of research really showing the benefits as an individual practice, like for physical and mental health. But there is also quite a lot of social implications of meditation. And there has also been studies recently to show that it can help prevent violence, help prevent conflict. And of course, that's very important for the work, for example, the United Nations is doing. And especially when we look at the current state of the world with most armed conflicts since the Second World War. I think for me personally, yoga itself basically means unity. So from the Sanskrit, and unity is defined there as the unity between the individual and the universal cosmic consciousness. And it really shows us that it's going beyond the self, but and translating into something more social.
Yeah, so I'm so curious about what that process was like in terms of introducing the idea and creating a World Meditation Day at the UN. I was curious, like, what the reception you got was when you started talking to various foreign nations about let's actually classify and recognize this as an annual day. Did people think it was too woo-woo? Did they think it was a good idea? How did that go?
Yeah, so when last year, when the General Assembly adopted a resolution proclaiming World Meditation Day, that was, of course, a huge milestone for many. And this was done under the leadership of a core group of states consisting of Andorra, India, Liechtenstein, Mexico, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Of course, it made sense to bring together like-minded states who have somehow an access to this topic. For example, Mexico has been a leading role on mental health at the UN. The Asian countries, of course, they have also ancient tradition of meditation. For us, it was also the human rights angle. And the idea or the vision behind it was really to emphasize the universality of the practice, its multiple benefits. And so when we introduced this idea to the broader membership, it was well received and supported from countries of all regions. And we were able then to adopt this resolution by consensus, so without a vote, which was pretty amazing. So it really enjoyed the support from the whole UN membership, but also the UN system more broadly. So, for example, UN leaders such as the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights expressed his support for the initiative and the benefit meditation can have for human rights advocacy, for example. I mean, it's an invitation to member states, but also all communities, societies, individuals to raise awareness about the practice, to promote their own traditions, research around it. So it's really an offering for everybody and not just, of course, UN member states or governments.
Miriam, moving from the personal to the institutional, if you were
Mhm.
advising the UN on how to integrate mindfulness practices into the culture, the operations of that institution, what advice or recommendations would you give them? Is it opening a meeting, maybe with 1 minute or 2 minutes of
Yeah.
silence, or what are some practices that institutions can adopt to infuse mindfulness into the work culture there?
Yeah, I mean, the UN has, the General Assembly, 1 minute of silence dedicated for prayer or meditation at the beginning and at the end of each session, which means twice a year. And 1 minute. So that doesn't seem a lot. I think I would maybe start there and also think of maybe more difficult work tasks or conversations we have when we know there is a topic where states are divided, to maybe introduce a moment of silence and help kind of delegations or leaders to reset and ideally transcend, the self-interest. Of course, that's, not always so easy, especially when you come, to such negotiations with clear instructions what to achieve. And it takes not just one person to maybe change the mind or plant different seeds, but maybe it can sometimes help also to take out tensions or emotions and really bring us back. So we have a vision that we really see the bigger picture. And then that again brings me back to the yoga definition of unity, that unity is not just the individual and the universal consciousness, but also an understanding that every fragmentation or separation we have in place is human made. It's like a social construct. And it's really about reminding us that we are all the same. We are at the end one species, even though we represent different countries, there is national borders, but we are all on this planet Earth happen to be here at the same time, flying around somewhere in space, not knowing where we are going. And I think meditation really helps to reach this level of understanding that we are more than just the self, and we can kind of tap ideally into this more universal consciousness, and that really can be beneficial, you know, in how we address also global challenges.
Before we wrap up, we always like to try to give people practical tools they can use or ways to integrate this into their life. So, could you share with us maybe ways that you work into your busy day of running around between various delegations and meetings, how you find small ways to actually build this into a stressful, busy, and high stakes role.
There's so many different ways we can meditate and be mindful. This can be walking mindfully, for example. It can be a silent prayer. It can be chanting a mantra, mindful breathing techniques. I personally, I try to give myself a moment of silence early in the morning before I start work and facing the challenges of life. And for me, it's like this meditation practice coming from a yoga tradition. It's not just that, like sitting in stillness and being the witness of my own thoughts and not over identifying with them, but it's also incorporating certain values. One of the 8 limbs of yoga, and that's the very first limb, are the so-called yama. And these are like moral values. And the very first of these yamas is ahimsa, which you may have heard of. That's the principle of non-harming. And I think that's just, if we can incorporate that principle in how we show up, and non-harming is not just a passive way of dealing with the world, but it's really an active care. And this translates not just into our actions, but also into how we think and how we speak. So, choosing good intentions, kind words, and caring actions, I think that's really also what I ideally try to cultivate in how I show up. And that's just one example. So there's many more which I believe benefit my personal life and also the work we are doing at the UN, for example, like when we think of other principles such as non-possessiveness, non-greed, like that in itself shows the more social picture, like the solidarity dimension.
Well, Miriam, we are so grateful to have you with us today. I can think of no environment that better encapsulates the challenges, the complexities, the stresses, and pressures that people face and can really benefit from mindfulness in than high stakes diplomacy and the United Nations. Thanks so much for making time to chat with us.
Thank you to both of you.
Thank you, Miriam.